Hello and welcome to the Stronghold Digital Mining Daily Update. Today is Wednesday, July 5th, 2023. It's about 10 o'clock at night, so it's quite late, but we wanted to get this update in, so here it is. Let's start with our typical slide. Let's put it up, please. Okay, so this is quite interesting. 24-hour averages for PJM Penelec and PJM PP&L, much higher than recently. PJM Penelec, that is where the Scrubgrass power plant is located. Average grid price $96.57. PJM PP&L, which is of course the zone of the grid where the Panther Creek power plant is located. This is also the zone of the PJM grid where I happen to live. Average grid prices over the past 24 hours, $77.67. Bitcoin priced in dollars per megawatt hour, about $87.62, quite good to say the least. Bitcoin spot price 30,496 with a network hash rate of 386. Back to me, please. What has really been the hallmark of today, though, has just been the fact that we've been, I think, toggling towards grid sales for a substantial portion of the day. Well, maybe I shouldn't say a substantial portion. A decent portion of the day, because grid prices have just been, they've been really strong. At one point earlier this evening, it was around like almost 7 o'clock or so, I saw that we were potentially generating upwards of $50,000 an hour in revenue. And that's primarily driven by grid prices that were in the hundreds of dollars. Now, granted, that type of thing doesn't necessarily last for a long period of time, but what's so amazing about great grid prices is that we can devote like all of our megawatts, so to speak, to that. So, for example, Scrubgrass has a nameplate capacity of 85 megawatts. Panther Creek has a nameplate capacity of about 80 megawatts. 165 megawatts in total. There's no halvings, there's no mining machines involved. It's just, hey, we produce electricity, right, to our capacity, we sell it to the grid, and we could do that, literally just at a flip of a switch. We can go from the data center to selling that same electricity to the grid pretty much instantaneously, like, within a minute or so, if not less. So that is one of the really cool things about Stronghold Digital Mining that I'm not entirely sure is fully appreciated. Yes, we are a Bitcoin mining company, right? Stronghold Digital Mining, right? It's in our name. That being said, because we are vertically integrated, we own, our two power assets. We own our own data centers. I mean, there's a lot of flexibility that is inherent to having that type of vertical integration. So when grid prices are as compelling as they have been during significant portions of the day today, the opportunity exists to just sell that electricity to the grid and to really make some very useful revenue in the process, to say the least. Now, listen, Bitcoin price in dollars per megawatt hour, BTCMW, that number is great. For us, realistically, based on our expense profile in Q1 2023, I've been indicating that we want to try to make at least $11,125 per hour, ideally, right? That assumes our, fuel, operations and maintenance, as well as our general and administrative, like those three expense categories, assuming they stay about the same as they were in Q1 2023, to break even, we want to try to at least achieve 11,125. Now, as I alluded to, a number of updates ago, it is plausible and perhaps even likely that we are able to reduce some of those expenses even further, and we may potentially see that reflected in our Q2 2023 results. But until we get confirmation one way or the other, let's kind of assume, hey, we got to make about $24 million a quarter to kind of break even with those core operational expenses. And that basically translates into about $11,125 per hour. Suffice it to say, today, we have been doing incredibly well. So that's a really good thing. Now, I do want to address a question that has come up in the comments, and it's a really good question. It has to do with, first and foremost, how many shares outstanding are there for Stronghold Digital Mining? Okay. And kind of like part of that question is, what's our market cap? It's kind of an amazing thing, right? Our company is so incredibly opaque in some ways, in the sense that, whereas for a lot of companies, hey, you could go to like, Yahoo Finance or Google Finance or, TradeView or wherever, right? And usually you'll see the same data from one platform to another. However, as it relates to Stronghold Digital Mining, it's through no fault of our own. It just seems as if though we kind of are in something of a quasi Bermuda Triangle, so to speak, where it's like the data is very, it seems to vary from one platform to another. So, in the interest of being as precise as possible, let me sort of address this question as follows. In our Q1 2023 investor presentation, which is available on the Stronghold Digital Mining website under the IR or Investor Relations portion of the website, if you pull up the presentation that was made, right, the slide deck, it's a PDF file, and you look, you'll see that there's actually a portion of that presentation that talks about our, essentially our fully diluted market cap. And it presents a number based on where the stock closed at the time that slide presentation was put together. If you look at the footnote, it'll say words to the effect, I'm not reading this directly, this is from memory, but words to the effect of based on like fully diluted shares of like 145 million shares using the treasury method. This was prior to our 1-for-10 reverse stock split. So for the purposes of the Zyner.com dashboard, like if you go to Zyner.com, you'll see that the dashboard autonomously computes the market cap in real time. What I essentially did was I took that fully diluted, using the treasury method, share count provided in the Q1 2023 investor presentation, and essentially I divided it by 10. So it came out to about 14.5 million shares. As of right now, I'd have to double check, but I'm like 98% certain that is the number of shares that's being used by the dashboard. That being said, okay, I'm not entirely sure, really, if we actually, as of right this moment, physically have 140, well, in this case, it would be like 14.5 million shares floating around out there. So do you see where it becomes a little bit tricky? I'm optimistic that when we get our next investor presentation for Q2 2023, which will likely come out sometime in early August, I'm optimistic that we might get an update as to what the visibility is in terms of our like total number of shares outstanding. Yes, in the past I've gone to the 10Q and looked at Class A shares, Class V for Victory shares, and then added that all up to come up with our shares outstanding. And that, in fact, will represent the number of shares that are outstanding. But when you take into consideration kind of like some of the other things that have taken place, warrants that are floating around out there, this, that, the other thing, again, without getting too technical, if our investor presentation is providing a market cap based on a fully diluted share total at the time of 145 million shares using the treasury method, well, that's in the slide deck, okay? So, I want to try to be somewhat consistent with what, our leadership is putting out there, right? And so if that's what we're using for the slide deck, that's good enough for me to use on the dashboard, if that kind of makes sense. So I apologize for not having a perhaps more precise number, but again, this is a little bit of an opaque sort of number. It is what it is. The good news, however, is that regardless of whether or not we have X number of shares outstanding or Y number of shares outstanding, our stock price is the stock price. And so that brings me, of course, to perhaps what is the most mission critical part of today's update. And I want to provide an exact number here if I can successfully log into my phone here really quickly. Let me just pull up my notification. Yeah, so we were up over 16% today. We closed at $5.93, so up 83 cents today alone on shares traded, like over a million shares. So that in and of itself is indisputable, right? It's not like we have multiple stock prices out there. There's only one stock price. Now, that's really great news. And the funny thing is, though, what are we trading at? $5.93. Listen, I'm gonna just say something very directly into this camera. Okay? I'm gonna tell you straight from my not just heart, but from like all my analysis and just research as to this company. We should really be trading at least at $10 a share. You know, I think our all-time high, split adjusted, for this year is like $11 and change. I mean, and that was like many, many months ago. We are arguably in a better position right now than we were like several months ago. So by that definition alone, we probably should be trading closer to our, year-to-date all-time high. And so this stock price, even though, yes, it's exciting that we've kind of levitated from the high $3 zone, right, to now we're pretty much, approaching $6. At one point today, we actually traded at $6.29 a share. From my perspective, we have room to continue running, really. Whether we take a break for a couple of trading sessions, that could be understandable. I mean, these moves have been quite dramatic, right? The last two trading sessions. But our stock should really be at like $10, $11, $12 a share at a minimum. Then we could maybe make some, I think very persuasive arguments as to why I should really be closer to 20 or 25 or even 30. But at a bare minimum, let's take it one step at a time. Let's get this stock price back up to $10 a share. I mean, this is like ridiculous, okay? And again, this is from my perspective. Yes, I'm incredibly biased, right? But I'm also objective, to be fair, okay? I am quite objective when I talk about some of these things. It's not just about, oh yeah, the stock should be at 10. Look, there's a lot of math that goes into the creation of the dashboard, right, that I look at every single day, that many of you look at every single day. We collectively as a co-owner community, as a shareholder community, I think there's broad-based consensus to agree that, we've been radically out of sync with any type of reasonable valuation metric for quite some time now. And that's even taking into consideration some of the challenges that I think all publicly traded Bitcoin miners have had. So we're certainly not immune to that. But I think at this juncture, let's just keep it real. We should be at $10 a share or more. Now, part of the question that's asked in comments that I also want to address is this question of the at-the-market offering. Like, what's sort of going on there? How many more potential shares is that going to introduce? So on and so forth. Let's do this, okay? In the interest of time, I don't want this video to become a 45 to 50 minute O&M video. Let's dig into the at-the-market offering again tomorrow, okay? And at that time, in fact, to just make it a little bit more visually appealing, I could bring up the slide deck that I referenced today that talks about the 145 million shares, which of course, split adjusted is about 14.5 million shares. And then we could kind of add in, the total maximum number of shares that could potentially be sold pursuant to the at-the-market offering, bearing in mind that I believe from memory that it's like a potentially $15 million raise, right? And so the number of shares involved will vary depending, of course, on the price of the shares. So again, in the interest of time, to keep it somewhat, viewer friendly, right? Let's kind of like, we'll touch on that tomorrow, but I don't want to pretend like I'm ignoring it. I'm not. In fact, I've spoken about this before, but I'll speak about it again just so that we can all kind of like come to a clearer consensus as of early July, like where we stand with regard to those things. Okay, it has been an exceptionally long day, but an exciting day, a great day. I know that I tend to focus a lot on operations and I tend to focus a lot on a lot of different numbers. Hey, let's keep it real. For the overwhelming majority of us, right, the number one number is that stock price. So it's in all of our vested interest to see that stock price go up, okay? And we're starting to see that happen, not just for Stronghold Digital Mining, but really for the entire publicly traded Bitcoin mining ecosystem. It is as if though, as I alluded to previously, like a mysterious unseen force, right, has descended upon the market and has looked favorably, kindly upon the publicly traded Bitcoin mining space. And we're starting to see a lot of our shares collectively, right, as a group, move to the upside. I would argue that we have a lot further to go to catch up to where some of our peers in the industry are trading at. So let's take it a day at a time. Let's stay positive. Let's always be great. And we'll see each other tomorrow.